to another Random Code stream. I'm Jason Bach, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to do in this stream. There's a idea that I have for this library that I did some work on a couple months ago, and to have an example of how you create an interceptor in C#. And I had this idea about how to make it a little bit more generalized, but I'm not quite sure where to go with the design, and I think that's important first. So I want to talk a little bit about that before I just start diving in the code and going, okay, let's make this happen. So before I get into that, I want to start my music as protocol dictates. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Hey, Electron, best coder, I highly doubt that. I appreciate the sentiment, but highly doubt that. So with rocks, one of the reasons why I keep maintaining this project is it's given me a really good excuse to, or a really, call it an excuse, but also it's a great vehicle to force me to learn new features in C#. Because some of them can end up affecting rocks. So rocks is this mocking framework I created in .NET that allows you to create mocks, similar to frameworks like MOQ and Substitute, except it uses a source generator. And throughout the years, one of the things that's always bitten me is when something either works in C# that I didn't realize, and I have to change how Rocks does stuff, or there's a new feature in C# that makes me go, oh, I gotta change what Rocks is doing when it's generating its code. So I've been starting in the last couple of years to try to get a little bit ahead of the game and look at the features and try to figure out, could they affect Rocks in any way, shape, or form? So rather than trying to react to finding it out because a library that I'm referencing in my suite of tests suddenly exposes it. So this one is for C# 15. That is what is slated for the end of this year, because they do a release now in November of every year. So 14 is the latest supported. This list is what's called the working set. It's not set in stone. So nobody should rely upon anything that's said here that it will be in 15 or a future version. This is just what they're working on right now. So I'm not going to go into every one of these features, but I did go through the list, and I think there are a couple that could potentially affect rocks. One of them is unions. So there's definitely it looks like this feature is finally going to land in C# 15, at least as a experimental feature. So you'll create a union like this. Say it's a union that could be either a cat or a dog, and you can have an implicit conversion, I guess, pet dog. I'm not sure. This code looks really weird. But the point is that there's going to be unions, and I'm not sure how that's going to affect rocks, if at all. And what actually happens when code is generated. I don't know if you can derive from a union, and if, what it means to have overridable virtual members on a union, if at all. I don't know. But it's definitely one that's making me at least go, may have to investigate this one. I'm also wondering with my custom serialization engine for CSLA, I wonder how unions would work in a serialization framework. That might be kind of interesting to see where that goes. So there's that one. Closed class hierarchies. I didn't even hear about this until I was looking through the list. And it seems like you can say a class is closed. So you can, in the assembly that the type is defined, you can derive from it. That's okay. But in other assemblies, you can't do it. So you can see it, but you can't derive from it. Only types within. I think there is actually a visibility or accessibility, I get those terms mixed up all the time, in C# that basically says that you can only do this, but it's not exposed in C#, and I think this would do it. Either way, this may be something I have to look at to say, well, can I create a mock for it would now include, is it closed or not? So I think at least I'd have to take a look at that. So we'll see. So there's that feature. What's another one that's on the docket? These are all the ones that are on the list. I'm not going to go through all these. I just want to go through the ones that may affect rocks in some way. Extended layout? I don't know. I don't even know what this is. So, oh wait, this is extension. Do I have the wrong link? I do. Okay. This extended layout attribute, I have the wrong link in my doc, but we can go to the working set here and you can see what this layout attribute is. Specify type layouts or manage callers. I don't know if this is going to affect anything other than I've noticed throughout the years that there are times that attributes that exist on members in the type you're trying to mock can affect a derived type. Either it needs to be included or it shouldn't. You know, there's certain things that it needs to be handled. Hey, Theo. So that's really the only thing I could see this affecting. If for some reason it's on the type that we want to mock. The other ones, you know, I really don't know. But just wanted to bring this up because, you know, even though it's February and there's 6 months down the road, and some of these features like unions, these aren't things that necessarily they have 6 months to figure out. Some of the, like, unions have been in the works for years, and dictionary expressions have been in the works. When they put it into like the working set, or if they actually start doing real work on it, it's because they've done a lot of experimental work already and design meetings and trying things out first before they finally land on, yes, this is the way we want it to go. So, you know, that they don't just put in features willy-nilly. And these are just the docket. This is a list of what they might do in the next version. So, and again, this can affect rocks. So, all right. So what I want to work on, and I don't know how far I'm going to get on today, it's definitely going to be part one of probably many, is a couple months ago, I don't remember the last time I streamed about this library, but I wanted to have an example of using interceptors in C#. And if you don't know what an interceptor is, it's basically, it's a generator in C# that you're looking for invocations. And then you see, does it have an interceptable, that's a great word, location. So every time you see like a method call here or here or here, these are all invocations in your code. And I've got to stress that because this is not like a interception approach that works for all invocations of a method. It has to be something that is literally showing up in your code in that assembly. Okay. So some people may look at this and go, oh, I can do like a fully, like a thing like the profiler API where I can hook into every method invocation and do something. That's not what this is. This is basically saying you call the method in your code. You can create an interceptor that says, instead of actually calling that method, call this instead. And whatever you do there is up to you. Okay. So with the generator, you find these invocations, you see if it's something that you really want to do something with, and then you can just generate code to handle that invocation. So my first proof of concept was just to do something like in this builder, which is kind of a little hard to see with all this code here. I'll definitely have to clean this up, but I was just trying to get a concept to work in the first place. So what ends up happening, and I have an example to show this, like if I have a program here, ignore all the warnings, they're useless. What is this? Oh, it's obsolete. That's right. Okay, never mind. So we have to set this logger on this context because for reasons you're about to see. And then I call processor process, where I pass in a 2 and basically multiply it and get back 4. Okay. And then I print this out. But if I run this, you'll see that what happens is we see about to invoke, but then we get this log call in here. And then we see this method invocation here with what we're returning, and then we complete it. And the reason why this happens is because if we look at the generated code, here's that context where we have a logger, and then we have to create this attribute. And then here, that interceptable location gives us this base 64 encoded string that essentially points to where in code the invocation occurs, so that the compiler can now reroute the call so that it goes to this method. And that's where we just do our logs here. We actually call the real method and then we put that back. So we basically put like a logging aspect around this invocation. Okay. So it's a generalized approach to logging interceptors. Now the thing too, or to logging invocations. Now one of the things that I think, did I build that in yet or not? Oh, that's right. It's in the actual project. Yes. So one of the things you have to do, and this is just an Interceptor's feature requirement, is that you have to have this element in your project file and to say which namespaces, which types and which namespaces should get your interceptor to be fired on. Now that doesn't mean you have to handle all them. It's just, it's a way to opt into the feature, because if it just ran all the time, it would be really, really slow. Because you can imagine how many invocations. Remember, properties are also invocations in C# as well. There's a method underlying your getter or your setter or your initter, and you have to, those would be suddenly intercepted as well. And so that could be a lot of generated code. So having this in is saying only those types within the namespaces that you've defined will be considered for interception. Now you can do more after that. You can filter even more by creating your own custom filtering approach, however you want to do it. That's up to you. But you need that in there at least to get it to trigger for anything. Okay. All right. So that's great. That's wonderful. I got more coffee. The thing though that is rolling around in my head is this is the generated code and that's all great, you know, but could we do something where we could generalize this even more? So for example, maybe I don't want to log the method. Maybe what I want to do is something completely different in the interceptor, in the intercepted method. And so what my thought was, and I don't know if I have, hold on, let me look up something here real quick in code. I'm not sure if I have notes on this or not. So I'm just looking up something real quick. I doubt I do. If I don't, I should start making notes, but I thought I did. No, I don't. Okay. So maybe what the right thing to do is start getting some notes in play and try to demonstrate what I want to do. So it's kind of bothers me because I thought I had written down something somewhere. Do I have anything? No, I don't have a, I don't have a .NET Lab tab open to explain this, but we can work with what we get here. So let's say that, okay, this is our target. Okay. This is So you sketch things out. First, let's say this is our target. And before I go any farther, I should make a branch, right? Branching is good, right? Do we change anything in here? What did we change? Everything passes, right? Oh, I am also going to need to update the libraries, because those all got updated too, but first things first. Okay. We'll just say git commit updated package versions. Push that. Okay, now let's make a new branch. And let's save this. Yeah, that's a. This is why I called the stream. Whoops. Where are you? There you are. Part 1, because I know this is going to take a while, which is fine. Yes, I trust this. It's my own computer, for crying out loud. So that we have a program that invokes it. And I'm going to get rid of some of these things here because I just want to focus on the actual problem at hand. With Tachyon play, assuming let's put that in there too. Actually, regenerate this code. Okay, so we can now go here and say this is what we generate. That's a lot, okay? What I'd like to do is this. So this is the thing I want to do. So we take this. We generate the interceptors. Actually, I'm thinking about to do update new packages. Consider putting all Gen code into either context or okay. For now, we're just putting a class out there called processor interceptors. And we're saying let's get rid of that comment just because it's not needed. We don't care what that data is, but the compiler generates it right. Well, assuming it's correct. What I want to do here instead is say something like static partial and make the class partial. And then the rest of this goes away. So the point is, Tachyon no longer just logs. In fact, it wouldn't do anything. It would, other than creating a partial member. It's now up to the user to provide something like this. So now you would have to define in your code. Oh, we should put C# here. What do I usually say? C#, yeah. Sometimes I say the actual word C#, but C# is fine. So now you would put here, I think the right syntax is that you actually have to still keep I just realized something by doing this. We could get into an infinite loop, right? We'd have to look at the type that we are creating to make sure that it's not... Yeah, so... And I think you have to also have the attribute here as well. I'm not sure. And this is why I wanted to spend time just thinking things through, because I don't know if this is actually going to be even doable or not. So the one thing that I don't want this to run wildly out of control is, one, if I keep this here, how would I know what this is supposed to be? This is the code that's generated. So now, because it's partial and there's no implementation, that's going to, the compiler's now going to yell and say, hey, there's nothing that actually provides a body or an implementation to this method. Okay. And so if I do this, now we're golden, right? But it's in this namespace. And it's okay right now because the actual body of the method is doing something up here. Wait, did I just type something? No, I didn't. And this code that's generated when generate code, that isn't observable by the interceptor or the generator again. It just, the generator generates that code based on what's in your compilation. The generated code is kind of in this special space that you can use that code in your application, but you can't change it, and the interceptor or your generator can't. It doesn't react to that code being there, or another generator can't react to that code being there. You know, because in part you start getting into the problem of how do you know which generator should run first and which one should run next. But if a generator could also react off of generated code, then you could start getting into a loop where you just keep doing things over and over again, and that would not be good. So the Roslyn stuff only works on things that exist in the code that the user is responsible for. So, but this leads to an interesting problem in that if I did this, now I'm going to have to write this code. And what would the generator do with this? Would it go off the deep end? And even if it did this, how would I know what to put on as the attribute here? Do you have to put, if I put an attribute on a partial type or partial method, does that attribute need to exist in both places? To the .NET Labs. And this is also maybe attribute specific, because maybe the compiler handles attributes differently. So let's say we had a public partial class thing that had public partial void stuff. Okay, that's great. But now you're seeing it has an implementation here. So what do we want here? We want to have an attribute. Let's make our own attribute. So let's say we have a public sealed class my attribute, which derives from attribute. Very simple. Okay, so now we put my there. Now, if I actually say somewhere else in the compilation that I provide an implementation, duplicate. Nice. That's actually good. So that's not what I meant. I'm not in Visual Studio. So that actually is good, because it's saying then that you can't, and that actually makes sense, because partials are just basically the compiler matches them all up together. So if you had two attributes, though that is interesting. What happens if we put attribute usage on this, where we say, oh, why can't you? Yeah, I would like, this is where I don't like .NET Labs, because I would really like to see what this is. And fine. .NET attribute usage. I wrote a book on attributes like 2 decades ago, and I don't even remember how it works. So attribute targets, we can say attribute targets method. Okay, that's fine. And then we can say allow multiple is equal to, well, even if you say true here, okay, I could put my own my, and that would be fine, because by default, the attribute usage of an attribute is not to allow multiple, as we saw. But if it is, well, that's okay. If we don't put one here, in that case, there is one here. That would be the intercepts attribute, and we'd still be fine. So we don't need to do that. So that solves that issue. But I still have a bigger concern, which is what happens if, so we can take this off. We know we don't need that. But this is now in this namespace, which we're assuming the user has put no, that's not what we want, because we're saying that's our namespace, that's where this came from. Okay. We see now we come down here, and now we have, if we do this, right down here, we're now in that namespace. We've created another piece of code that has this process interceptors. So I think what we would want to do is say, and I'm using the name Tachyon here as just a holder, because it was from the example project, but is to instead, this is just this context that we have for logging. This is the way the attribute needs to be defined. But then this, we could have something like and I know this looks weird. It's just that in the example that I have this. So then you create that, you have this. So then it wouldn't fall into the problem that we're having right now, which is the fact that you won't get like a recursion or anything like that. It won't even look at this in your code because it's not one that's a namespace that could be handled, if that makes sense. Assuming this works, the point of what I'm getting at is now you can do whatever you want, and the compiler is going to force you to declare this. Okay. This is a little annoying. This is nice because the compiler is going to enforce it, but it's also a bit annoying because create a refactoring to generate or analyzer plus code fix to generate the, what do we do in rocks? Hold on. Because I want to create something that the user gets some benefit out of. It is a refactoring. Okay. So we do have that as a refactoring. To generate the Interceptor class based on a invocation. C rocks for an example of this. The user has to define this. Maybe a refactoring could make this easier. So the reason I'm mentioning this about a refactoring is like way up the top here, you have this code. Okay. And this is where the interceptor is going to be. The generator creates the interceptor for this method. And so what you could do here is do the alt dot in C#, and then it could provide a thing to say create interceptor code. And it would either do it in the file you're in, hey Electron, it would do it either in the file that you're in, or like in Rocks, you could have a file that would do that generally. And so then what it would do either way is it would spit out this code, and then it would, have a comment in there to say, do whatever you want. And it's up to you now. But at least it generates that, and you don't have to do that. If there's multiple methods for that type, it would generate all of them. Any member that has an implementation. I have Viva tomorrow. What is Viva? I have no idea what that is. Sorry. I'm excited for you or scared. I'm not sure. I don't know what that means. So that could at least reduce the amount. Now, one other idea too that I have here, and this is why I've been wanting to go through this from a design perspective first, is if I go back to Tachyon, I'm thinking of having it's like an exam. Oh, okay. I know you live in the UK, if I remember right. I know, like in the United States, man, well, this is going back 30 years, but when there was testing that you had to do for, like, if you want to go to college, you take either the SAT or the ACT. And then if you want to go to grad school, you had to take the GRE. I have no idea if that's the same thing. So, I also remember as kids, we had to take these tests. We had to fill in all the holes, and then they would send the tests in, and then it would determine like how well you did. And apparently that was like, oh, that's a determination of how smart you are or not. And I'm like, well, maybe sort of, but not really. The one thing was that you learned is don't ever fill out, because there was like an option there. Every question had A, B, C, or D choices, and then there was a DK don't know, where you're like, we should fill DK in if you don't know. And it's like, no, if you don't know, guess. You know, at the very least, what harm is it going to be if it's wrong? If you put in DK, you're saying, like, are you being ethical to say I don't really know, or are you just like, give your best guess? So, if I do a stream tomorrow, but see you later. Good luck on whatever that test is. Actually, I'm kind of curious. I want to look something up now. Can you not do that? Oh my God. Why is it now doing this stupid Copilot search thing? Can I just... Okay, I wanted to see what the search results were before I showed them. UK, during the Viva examination, understand the purpose. It's an oral examination where you defend your thesis, assessing your research quality, originality, preparing your thesis, practice, contact examiners. Wow, this sounds... this actually sounds like what I had to sort of do for my master's thesis when I was in grad school. I don't know. Maybe that's the same thing that you're talking about. Anyway. Interesting. So the other thing is that I have an issue out here to do this additional file processing. And so I thought, like, I could create an additional document, because you can have additional files that can be seen by a generator. And that would have things in here that would say, well, assuming you've configured your Interceptor's namespace element correctly, you know, that's the first thing. The second thing, though, is that you could use this, and this might just be as simple as like a starts with string. Like I think I say that here. Look at how a method is represented as a string. Yeah, so see if there's a way I can get like the full name of the invocation in Roslyn, and then say this is the way the name would look. And then so you could do something and just say, I'm going to put in whatever I find at the beginning. So maybe I want to say, as long as it's from system GUID, that's fine. As long as it's from system string and it's is null or, and this would be white space, or is null or empty, and all the overloads would be caught for that. Or maybe I just want to look for system string concat with at least the first two parameters being string, that overload. And so this would even narrow it down more, so that you know, if you don't provide this file, then as long as the type is in the namespace, we just process it. But if you do provide this file, then we'll say, like, we'll have like a Tachyon filtering file, just some name, Tachyon filters. And then it could be a simple, you know, text file. Just every line defines a filter. The reason I think this gets tied into this is because we may also and I'm not sure about this because I don't want to lose the functionality that I currently have. I think this could be nice. This could be like, again, when I run this, you know, you do see this before and this after invocation on the log. And I kind of like that. I don't want to lose that. And I kind of want to have maybe as an option to say, I don't want to provide my own interceptor. I don't want to provide my own custom logic. Just log them because I need to figure something out. So can you just go off and write all the logging code and so I can run my app and see, oh, that done. Or maybe I want to use OpenTelemetry and I want to provide a way to say when these methods are invoked, write something out to OpenTelemetry. You know, or when this method is invoked, send a message to our Kafka bus or, you know, our Kafka stream. I'm sorry. Sometimes I get just words messed up, but some messaging service. I want to send a message because that's happened. You know, there's a whole bunch of things that like we could have, and I know this is like aspect-oriented programming. Like I want to do things before and or after a method is invoked. And so this can start to become very complicated, but that's where I'm kind of wanting to go with this Tachyon thing is I want it to become not an aspect-oriented programming framework. That's not really the intention, but to maybe have some prepackaged aspects or packaged interceptor invocations that you could use. And then if you say, hey, I want this and this, like maybe I want to do this around the code, or I want to do this around the code, that I could put those in there. Okay. Or you just say you don't, and then it would go through and just generate this, and then you're responsible for doing whatever you want in there. Or you want to have all of that done, and when the interception actually occurs here, and you have this method being called, maybe I do want maybe I do want to have some notification to do something of what it does. And so I would actually then maybe instead of having process, we say on process. That wouldn't work because it's not a method on this thing. But maybe we put on the interceptor as like an on process. So this would actually end up becoming, if I go down to my notes here, there's a lot that goes through my head on this. I'm seeing the vision, even though maybe people aren't, but that's fine. Because I know I'm babbling a little bit. Maybe here, what we do is we say, depending on what's in configuration, we would have interceptors. On process. And so it wouldn't actually call the real thing. It would call this, and now you're responsible for it. Of course, there's name collisions. What happens if there was a on method on that type? What do you do in that case? You know, it can start to get to be a little bit. Although this type is one that we are creating, so I think the thing that we would want to do here is say, yeah. We may want to keep the logging aspect around, generalize that concept, and make it configurable so other and it keeps putting in quotes because I really don't want to can be defined. I don't know how you could plug this though. That's the problem is I don't think that this could ever be a pluggable framework. Because Tachyon is a package in and of itself. I don't think there would be a way to say make it so that it's part and parcel of, like, or you can make another assembly somewhere that the Tachyon package would just know about and be able to include in the generator part. I don't think that's possible. They'd have to be defined in Tachyon proper. Maybe there's a way around that to handle that. I don't know. And also keep a concept where you could use aspects, but also force the user to provide an implementation. Where and on method is generated in the interceptor. That's partial. Okay, that's a lot of babbling. And I haven't written any code yet, but I needed to go through all this because again, so sometimes it's good to just talk about design, talk about how do you actually want to do something, and what's the best way to hit that target, so you don't paint yourself into a corner, but you don't also potentially make something so big that it's really hard to manage and figure out. So I think at this point, yeah, I'm 50 minutes, but I'm kind of done already. But this is the first part, is to kind of talk about all this stuff. I think there's definitely a possibility to make this very, not generic, but generalized. And also make it so that we could still maintain the logging stuff if you wanted or not. Add things in to say I want to put in different pre and post implementations. And maybe what we do is we say, for a given filter, here are all of the pre-methods you have to call. So maybe we have something like random idea for filtering and plugging aspects in. So maybe we have something where we have filters. Okay. And I don't like code with configuration, but we have a filter where the can we do that? Not necessary. Maybe JSON. It doesn't really matter what the format is. It's the structure that matters. Filter value would be something like, if I go back to here, and if you just do this, then that just says we want this type, but we don't do any filtering. It doesn't make any sense. We do filtering in this. Maybe. See, that's the problem though. If I was thinking maybe we get a way to say put a type in there, and then what we do is say that type has a method and we just invoke that, but it would be very late bound reflection based. The nice thing about the logging stuff with Tachyon right now is that it embeds that code into the generated stuff. So like you see here, we get the begin scope. We get this with all the string here, but that's all embedded. We don't have to figure out any of this stuff at runtime. And that's a nice thing to have. And so I don't want to necessarily put something in here to say like a pre-invocation step is to call this, and it would go off and do something. But maybe let's just put the concept down because it might be worth it. And so maybe we have something like, I'm just throwing out names here. It doesn't matter. Okay. But on pre, on the pre, you could have a you could say I want to do logging, but not on the post. But on the pre, I want to have something that says I'm just going to say aspect type is equal I don't know how this would work. Okay, that gets really messy in a hurry because now you're in configuration hell, and that's something that I really want to avoid with this. I would almost say if you really want to do all that stuff, then what you should do, like there could be pre-configured canned ones in here that just say, like if you do this, it will just generate a partial method that you have to implement. If you provide any pre or post that you want, maybe what we actually say here is logger would be one, and then we say location is equal to pre. And then maybe we have, I'm just going to throw a Kafka here. Like we have one and we say pre and post. And then maybe we have another messaging one. Okay. That's just post. So that you could, these are ones that are predefined. Okay. And then maybe we put in the filter for these, we also say generate, not as an element here, but we would say generate partial equals true. If you don't provide any filters, it's automatically going to do, or you don't provide any aspects. Then it's automatically going to be true. If you do provide aspects, it's not going to be true unless you set it, because then that will actually then say, okay, I'm going to generate this partial method for you, surrounded by all these things, and the order of which these are going to be applied is the order that it's seen coming from the processing. So you do a logger pre, you do a Kafka pre, and then you do a Kafka post and a messaging post. That's just the way it works. Again, I don't like configuration. If you don't provide any configuration, then it would just be whatever members you see in the Interceptor namespaces that you give. They would all be done where they generate the partial type, and you'd have to implement it. But if you add this configuration file, then you have some control over to what is going to be done, right? And if you wanted to do something for every single one, you could have, because they're all going to start with global, typically, unless you're using aliases, but I'm going to forget that corner case right now. And you could put in a corner case for the alias if you know what the alias is. But you could just say there then that everything that comes with the Interceptor namespace is going to get the partials. Now, of course, there's rules that would have to kick in for this too, which is what would happen if this matches. You know, this is automatically going to match with this. So how do you know, like, which one do you pick? I think you'd have to do like a fall through approach, which is to put this at the bottom. You know, because if you have a file here that's basically saying I'm handling what's going on, the way to get like a catch-all is to put this at the bottom. You can almost think of this as like a switch expression in your code, which is to say, if it matches this, then I'll do this. Or if it matches this, you know, then the next one I'm going to look at is, does it match this one? Yes or no? Does it match this one? Well, this is the fall through, and this means I'm basically going to create a partial. All right, this actually helps. I know this sounds like a lot of rambling here, but I think this is the right way to handle stuff. I think this actually gives me a clearer picture as to how I want to design this, and think of the cases that could kick in when we do this. This could be kind of fun, and make Tachyon a fairly nice, powerful little package that you can use in, you know, certain cases to do stuff. I like that. And it gives you the ability to say, you know, for these types, I'll handle the partial, I'll generate it, you know, I'll put that in there, and then I'll do my own custom. I'll log it this way, or I will put this in there, you know. There's all sorts of things you could do. You could build your own refactorings once that's there to say, what does this signature look like? And so now I'm going to make a logging statement in there. You know, you could do that too. And the power of Rosalind. I'm seeing the vision, even though you may not, which is fine. But this has been good. I think this is a good part one. I think in the next part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start actually building all of this out and seeing where I can go with this. I think this will be a little frustrating at times, most definitely. But this is also, I think, going to be a lot of fun. And just to see where I can go with this. So with that, I'm going to stop the stream. I want to thank everybody who joined either now or in the future. Please subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. The next time I do a Random.Code stream will probably be either tomorrow or Tuesday. I want to keep moving on this. I don't want to lose, you know, track of the vision, and I want to keep doing stuff with this. So hopefully I'll do one on Tuesday. I'm also going to be doing some gaming streams with Lego Lord of the Rings this afternoon, and maybe in the evening. We'll see. I feel like I'm now on a roll to start getting things to where I can start getting to 100% quicker. I've always felt about this with Lego games. There's this part where once you get enough coins and once you start getting enough bricks, you can start to like do more and more, and it starts becoming this, you know, it starts making it easier to find everything and doing 100% of the game. So, but it's a kid's game, hardest difficulty. Anyway, I plan on doing that this afternoon and maybe the evening. So with that, I am going to end the stream. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.